Welcome back to the Ghosted podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Abby Rosenblum, matchmaker as well, and host of this podcast. And today I am super excited to talk about emotions, as if we don't talk about them enough on this podcast, but managing your emotions while also managing your expectations when it comes to dating. We'll dive into a whole bunch of other stuff, but I must introduce today's guest. Dr. Carrie is a speaker, author, and psychologist who loves to help people learn easy ways to improve their relationships and to navigate the realities of life with ease. Thank you for being here.
True story. I'm so glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Abby Rosenblum, founder of The Social Modern Matchmaking and your host of Ghosted, a podcast about making dating easy and fun again so you can find your boo. Get it? We'll talk with dating experts, coaches, and real clients of mine and single people from around the world. Stick around for corny jokes, dating advice, and deep dives into the psychology behind finding love.
And I am so glad I just got to read majority of your book. So we will put in the show notes where you can grab this. I have got Post-it notes galore, notes, underlinings. That's just because I'm a nerd and that's how I read. You don't have to do that.
Awesome.
But it's super easy. I got to just do a quick plug for you because you can just flip to a page kind of that seems relevant to you. You don't have to read everything in order.
It is literally the book that my clients asked me for. They came in and would hand me huge self-help books and be like, I'm not going to read 300 pages. Can you just tell me what I should say when my boss is being a jerk and, or what I should do when this is happening or what I should do when that's happening. And so the book is 99 of my favorite, try this, not that tips and tricks. And you literally do not need to read the whole book. You just turn to the page that you need some help with and go from there.
Right. Which is so nice because we all have such short attention spans these days that I don't know who I like reading, but not everyone sits down and is like, I'm going to read a 300-page book right now.
Yeah, I think most people are not reading 300-page books.
Probably not. And before we get to dive into our main topic today, I'm sure listeners would love to learn a little bit more about you and kind of hear where you're coming from. Give us the background of, what brought you into the world of mental health and what's got you to stay here to continue helping people.
Oh my gosh. So I decided an extraordinarily long time ago that I wanted to be a psychologist. I was 14 and I was volunteering in a therapeutic horseback riding center and one of our kids fell off the horse. And it was it's a big, long story. I won't tell the whole story. Good news, kid was okay. But it just brought up this desire in me to help people and to have that be kind of my central mission in life. And then when I went to college, I chose between law and psychology and ended up becoming a psychologist. I've been in private practice for 20 years and I love helping people feel good about themselves and their lives. And I also, I'm especially excited to be on this podcast because I really love love. I'm a big fan of marriage. I'm a big fan of healthy, fabulous relationships that are enriching and exciting to be in.
Right. And hey, we are definitely on the same wavelength in that realm. Yeah. And you also have an amazing story of how you met your husband, which I want to get to, but maybe we'll tease to have that at the end of the episode.
Okay, that sounds great.
So let's talk a little bit more about managing your emotions, managing your expectations before a date. Obviously I hear all kinds of things before a date, like I'm so nervous, I'm going to die, I'm going to throw up, I'm going to do this, I can't take it, I have butterflies, I'm excited. Like the emotions run through everything. So, how can people approach dating? Obviously the emotions are there, but how can you kind of manage them so you don't have so much anxiety you cancel?
I think part of how you manage the emotions is that you actually lower your expectations and you put this in a framework of fun. Mm-hmm. So I think one of our big mistakes that we're making in the world about relationships is that we're talking all the time about how much work a relationship is, right? And interestingly, really good relationships, certainly you have to be thoughtful, you need to be attentive, you need to pay them some attention, right? On purpose. But they should not really feel heavy and like work very often. They're actually supposed to be fun. And dating,
no way.
I think, yeah, I know, right? It's supposed to be a value add, people. This is supposed to be the thing that you enjoy in the world. So moving your framework from dating is hard and it's work and there's no one out there, right? Like any of those kind of negative frameworks that people bring into the dating realm, if you can kind of set them to the side and remind yourself that dating is technically supposed to be an exploration. If you can bring curiosity to it, that tends to decrease anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can bring a sense of exploration or fun or lightness, it's going to make the whole process a little bit less intimidating. And that's going to inherently help you both manage your emotions and make better decisions in the moment, because you're not walking into it desperate for a match, right? If you walk in desperate for a match, first of all, it's like wearing bad cologne. Like people are like immediately not interested. But also if you walk in desperate for a match, you don't tend to be slowing down and doing a good assessment of, is this a person I'm really excited to be with? And instead you're desperately trying to figure out, could this work? Very different energies, very different ways of getting to know people.
Right. And then you're all looking for all the negative things. You're like, okay, wait, can I deal with that? Can I put up with this? Rather than seeing who is in front of you and being like, oh, there are lots of good things about this person that I'm learning about. It's funny because I feel like it's almost sometimes people like being in that space of complaining about dating or saying it's hard. I mean, I kind of have my own ideas of why that might be, but I'm sure you see that a lot with people you meet with.
I do. And I think sometimes it helps people feel protected, right? Like if they walk into it knowing that this is like hard work and it's not going to be very much fun, then if a date doesn't go well, then it's the fault of, dating is awful, instead of, oh, like maybe I need to take a little bit of responsibility for that date not going well. Or like, whoa, I seem to be attracting the wrong people. What do I want to do? How do I back up and get better matches?
Totally. Yeah. And it is interesting. Like I have a client I'm working with right now, and there's a guy she met that she really likes. But she's kind of letting her emotions and anxiety creep in. And she's kind of convinced herself like, oh, he's playing games with me after he, his texting style changed. And then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're like, well, now it's like I've written him off because I think he's playing games. And then I can't even go on the date with him again, even though he still wants to go out with me. But I see this happen so many times.
And this is where there's all of this side chatter in your mind, right? And your side chatter is often not very helpful, right? Like so often the side chatter is like making you afraid of something, telling you should worry about something, it's the side chatter tends to be your brain doing a sweet job of trying to protect you, but actually it's doing a lousy job at being sweet and protective. And it's just kind of muddling you up. So this is where, and this is what I talk a lot about in my book, like if you can slow down and sort of notice the emotions and tuck them off to the side, right? Like, ooh, I'm really anxious about tonight. Okay, I'm really anxious about this date tonight. And how do I want to approach it, right? So noticing the emotions, and then you sort of tuck them off to the side and then decide how you want to behave. So your emotions aren't driving your behavior. You are driving your behavior and you are noticing your emotions. That's a very different way to approach things.
Oh yeah, that's like a total shift, which, probably sounds like a lot to take on for people. But it's probably easy to start maybe with one of your emotions. Don't need to tackle them all at once.
Well, and typically folks have emotions that are kind of predictable, right? Like I call it tendencies. Like most folks have a tendency to run anxious, depressed, angry, right? Like everybody knows the person who has a tendency to have a hot temper. They have a hot temper tendency. Okay, so for them, they're going to need to be managing that like aggressive reaction. For folks who have a tendency to run anxious, you're going to have to navigate the mental chatter that's telling you that you're not good enough, or that he doesn't like you, or that she's seeing other people, or whatever the fear is that's coming up. Like the person with an anxious tendency will need to manage that. The person with a hot temper tendency will need to manage that aggressive response. And this is true for men and for women. The person with the more depressive tendency will need to sort of manage this mopey sort of thing that happens, right? Like, and so it's not good or bad to have any one of these tendencies. And there's only, there's 12 people in the world who run neutral. They're fantastic. If you meet them, like take a picture because they're a very rare species, right? The rest of us have a tendency to run some other way. But noticing that tendency, I think, can really help settle down a reaction.
Right. And then if you see it happening over and over again, you're like, okay, I got this. I know
like,
it's
oh,
coming.
Hey, this is the thing that I do before a date when I feel anxious, right?
Yeah. And then kind of what you're talking about too, of setting your expectations so maybe your emotions don't go wild as much of, I always say viewing that first date as like a little meet and greet. Go see this person, see what you think, and then go from there.
And it's supposed to be fun, right? Like if curiosity is forward, then it's more fun. Mm-hmm. If you're curious, even a bad date then can be kind of enjoyable. Then a bad date can be like, oh, I'm going to be collecting great stories to tell, right?
Right.
But a good date can be really fun because then you're collecting good stories to tell.
Oh, totally. And I think too, it's like, I think back to, some of the horror story dates that I went on. Little did I know they'd be great material for my podcast one day. So you never know what you might learn on a date. Yeah.
One of the things I talk about in my book, which I think can also kind of give people a little bit of a like framework or a container to use on a date. I think you and I talked about this. I call it the three-legged stool of relationships, right? And so the three-legged stool of relationships came from a woman that I knew, an older woman. She was kind of a mentor of mine. She was really marvelous. And she was Danish and had a Scandinavian furniture painting tradition that had been handed down in her family. It's very detailed, super gorgeous. But she had this little three-legged stool. And this three-legged stool could hold 300 pounds. It was the strongest thing ever, right? However, if one of the legs wasn't screwed in at just the right angle, you would be flat on your butt faster than you can imagine.
Right.
And I was thinking one day after I'd gotten dumped on my butt, because I hadn't checked the legs.
Yeah.
Relationships are like a three-legged stool, and there's three parts to them. So there's attraction, which is kind of the most instinctual. Mm-hmm. Like, have you ever walked by somebody and you're just feeling like, oh my God, you smell so good?
Oh, totally.
Right? Yeah. Attraction. Mm-hmm. Attraction, it's instinctual. It doesn't even have to be visual. It can literally be about how someone smells or how they move, how they walk into a room. I'm always struck by like going to a concert. Who did I see in concert? John Mayer. This is forever ago. If you just look at a picture of John Mayer, he's a big, gangly kind of guy. I did not find him attractive whatsoever. He gets up on stage and starts singing. I'm like, wow, he's really hot. Like, who knew? Right? So attraction is leg number one of the stool. And attraction, most instinctual, kind of most automatic. Mm-hmm. And attraction is the leg that if it is missing, means that you're just friends. You do not have a relationship, romantic relationship stool. So if you have fit and timing, the two other legs, you can have a really marvelous friendship. Mm-hmm. But if there's no attraction, there's no romance.
Right. That's kind of an important factor.
Kind of critical. So step one, attraction, right? And you'll know, how often do you tell people like, go and just meet for coffee. Don't endlessly talk online or endlessly talk on the phone. Go and meet them because you're going to know in the first 60 to 90 seconds if you're intrigued physically and attraction-wise to this person.
You usually know right away. Sometimes it takes maybe a little time.
Usually you know right away. So step number two or leg number two is fit. So fit is the broadest category. Fit is all of the things that make you a good fit in relationship. Do you enjoy each other's friends? Do you have similar values? And there's little aspects of fit that become very tedious over time, like neat marrying messy gets in the beginning, feels like it isn't a big deal. It can actually be a very big deal over time because you're running into the same disconnect over and over and over again.
Can drive you nuts.
So fit is important to take a look at. Even some of those little things because sometimes those little things, because they're little, we forget that there's something that we're going to need to navigate. Fit is also, do you both want kids? Are you both interested in moving around in the world in sort of the same way? If you have one person who wants to go to Antarctica every 6 months and another person who never wants to leave their house, you're going to have a really tough time because you have an adventure person and you have a homebody person that's unlikely to be a great fit. Right?
Yeah, usually not.
What other things of fit do you think of or do you talk to clients about?
I think of values a lot, which it kind of goes along with, what you were saying. And that's one of the questions I love asking everyone I interview for matchmaking of, what are your top 3 to 5 values? Because it is so telling of if they know them or if they don't know what a value is, first of all. And, obviously then what they say. So, even talking about these kinds of things on a date, definitely doesn't have to be the first date, but, bringing up things like I think religion and politics are also kind of a big one where you might fit or not fit.
One of the hilarious aspects of fit that I've been talking to clients about is when I'm editing dating profiles, which I do sometimes, although I should really just send them all to you and have you have the expert do it. But I tinker, I dabble in this a little bit.
It's kind of fun, right?
It's hilarious. One of the aspects of fit is like icon pass or epic.
Oh my God. Yes. For people in Denver, you know what we're talking about.
Oh my gosh. What a Denver fit for, which ski pass do you have?
I can't believe people want to make that a deal breaker though. I gotta say.
I know. Isn't it funny? I was like, branch out. There's really good ski areas on the other pass. So
it is funny.
But so fit, biggest category, most internal, like what's precious to you. You're going to want somebody who aligns with the things that are precious to you, and you want to align with the things and the people that are precious to them.
Right.
So then the last. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to just say that there are some questions you could probably ask to determine those things, so that way maybe you don't get 6 months in and you're like, oh, wait, we don't view this the same way or that the same way. You don't have to come right out and be like, hey, do you want a family? Do you want kids? Do you want marriage? But you could just ask hey, what are some of your goals? Like, what do you want to accomplish? What's a crazy dream you have? Just to kind of get a feel of like what is important to that person.
And there's ways to assess fit by asking about someone's background.
Oh, yes.
Right? Like when I was dating in the Wayback Time Machine, I was a nightmare first date because I'm a psychologist, right? Like people run screaming from me.
Oh,
right?
God.
They think I'm going to ask them about their mother. I have 3 college degrees. Like it's ridiculous. It's really absurd, right? That is also how many you need to become a psychologist, just in case anybody's wondering. Yeah. But so on a first date, one of the elements of fit is I needed folks to actually value a growth orientation because my whole business is about helping people grow.
Right.
If I'm not paying attention to growth, then I'm a total hypocrite and that would not work for me, right? Like I want to be helping my clients grow and I want to be helping myself grow. So I needed to sort of assess, like, do they value education? Do they have a growth orientation? And that wasn't against anybody, but it was a huge piece of fit for me that was really important.
Right. And what were some of the questions you would ask to kind of feel that one out?
I mean, some of them are basic, like, where'd you go to school? And how, what did you like about school or whatever? But some of them are more like trying to just get a sense in conversation about, are they somebody who's learned something lately? Have they gone to a conference or a lecture? Is there an activity that they're really interested in that they train in or that they've tried hard in or something, right? Like any of that is kind of growth oriented stuff. Mm-hmm. So asking some more specific questions and then also really observing over time, this is someone who's interested in growth and talking about personal growth. So that helped me narrow the field.
Right. And if they have Dr. Carrie's book on their shelf, then that is the
then
side.
You know for sure.
Then they're a total catch too. So
the last leg of the stool, we should talk about that. The last leg of the stool is timing. Timing is the most external. And sometimes timing is the easiest one to deal with. Mm-hmm. Sometimes timing is impossible and it's heartbreaking.
Right.
Right.
Because you're like, if only. Yeah.
Right. Like timing is, are you both available for a relationship? Timing is, I had a good friend who is divorced and was extraordinarily clear he was not going to get married again, got a vasectomy, was not having any more children. Met someone absolutely lovely. She wanted marriage and kids. Even though there was a lot about their relationship that made them a good fit and they had really nice attraction, timing was blown. So they really had to be kind to themselves and to each other and say, I like you a lot, and this doesn't have legs. Right? Couldn't continue. So timing is also about some of those things, like when someone has a 20-year age gap, that is surmountable, particularly when you're between the ages of 25 and 60. But then at some point, timing becomes really a huge problem. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so understanding and negotiating some of those timing issues is really important. The easiest timing issue is, I live in Denver, you live in Detroit, somebody at some point is going to move. That's a timing issue. It's fine. You can probably get around that.
But yeah, there are some, and even just like scheduling dates, because this is, half of my job, where, my whole mentality is if we have to reschedule twice, this is not meant to be. Like there is something in the universe, something in the air, some kind of timing that's just not working out. And you can totally use this in your own dating life. Maybe you're like, okay, we schedule once. They say, something came up. I can't find a babysitter. Okay, we find another time. And then they're like, I got COVID. You're like, okay. It's like the universe is trying to tell you something that the timing isn't right. So, it can be frustrating because it's out of your control a little bit.
Well, and forcing it almost never works. Like forcing any one of the three legs doesn't work. It might work short term, right? Like you can put some duct tape on a leg and have it stabilize for a second. But if you're relying on one of the core foundational pieces of a relationship, and you think it's going to get better with time, right? Or get better if we get married, or get better if, right? Or eventually he's going to change, or eventually she'll stop doing. No, like that's duct taping one of the foundational legs. Please don't. Please don't.
Right, because then you're going to be down the line 5 years, 10 years, however long it is. It's like, oh yeah, that duct tape's not holding up.
Right. And oh my gosh, the same problem is still there.
Right. And it's like identifying the problems or challenges that are the things you can live with and you can accept about your partner. And then identifying the ones that are like, this is red flag material, exit, go the other way.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm curious too, because we said we would hear about your story of how you met your husband. Can you kind of relate that to the three-legged stool and kind of how attraction, fit, and timing panned out for you too?
Absolutely. So timing was amazing. So I ended up at a party and I walked into the party. It was actually a matchmaking party. And I walk into the party and I look around and I'm like, nope. Nobody's super interesting to me. But I had brought a friend to the party and she walked into the party and 30 seconds in met a guy who she's like, right? And he's like, about her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in this for the duration.
You're like, oh God.
Right? Like, whatever, here I am. So I ended up in a group, talking to a group of people and met a guy who was really delightful. We had a great intellectual connection, but it was pretty clear we weren't each other's type. And at some point he asked me, Carrie, what's your type? And I paused and he's like, no, really, I want you to tell me what your type is. So I custom ordered my husband.
How nice. Oh, you're going to get people excited listening.
I totally recommend custom ordering. And here's what I said. Some of this is kind of shallow, so forgive me. But I was like, tall is fantastic. Bald is preferred. Needs to be fit and a grown-up and pretty nerdy. And this turns out one of my husband's dear friends, and his friend said to me, oh, you need to meet my sensei. And I was like, sensei? what's a sensei, right? This sounds interesting. And this is like a little growth oriented, like fit question for me. Like, ooh, something I don't know about. This is interesting and intriguing. Yeah. And he said, yeah, and he works in the aerospace industry. Is that nerdy enough for you? I was like, yeah, that'll do. Thanks. So I custom ordered my husband and we went out on a first date and we just had a really great time. Easy conversation. Timing was easy, right? Like he called me, I was available. I'm never available. He called me, I was available. We sat and talked for 20 minutes. We set a date. We were both available at the same time. We go on the date and it's just easy, right? Like fit was just there from the beginning. Attraction was interesting. He ended the date and said, I think that went well. I'd like to do this again, and leaned in and gave me a kiss. And I was like, yep, attractive, right? So, and all of that worked for me. I know that wouldn't necessarily be the right either description or date for other people, but for me, I thought he was fantastic.
Right.
So, and now we're married, which is really fun. We got married in October last year.
Congrats. I like it. Coming up on the 1-year anniversary. Exciting. And, the reason I like to share these stories is not to say, oh my gosh, Dr. Carrie found her person and, you got to get with it, but just to show that everyone's journey to finding their person is different, So every single person that has told their story of how they've met their significant other on this podcast has been different. So, just my disclaimer is try not to compare yourself to your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues. And hey, go back and listen to the beginning of this episode all the way through if you still need more advice. And we have a part 2 coming up, which I'm super excited. And you're going to want to listen because it's a big part of the book. One of the coolest little chapters that I found. There's a whole exercise we're going to go through of how to find your ideal partner. So stay tuned for part 2. But before we get there, Dr. Carrie, quick plug for you. Where can people reach out to you? Where can they order the book so they can do that?
Thank you so much, Abby. Selfhelponthego.com. The book's title is Self-Help on the Go. That is also the website title, selfhelponthego.com. And my book is available on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and we'll enter in the search bar, Self-Help on the Go, it should pop up. And it's a blue book, looks like that. And I've been really humbled and super happy and excited about the response. People feel like it's helpful and easy to read. And those were things that I was really looking to provide. And it seems like it worked and I'm thrilled.
Amazing. So. And you're going to get another little tidbit, part 2, stick around. Might be a week, might be 2 weeks. Maybe it's already posted when you're listening to this, but you don't want to miss it. We'll be back for that.